Some men in history had 700 wives. Others in the exact same era had none and never would. You're a man in a small band 10,000 years before writing exists. Tonight, the group decides who marries next. Your odds come down to one fact: how many animals you brought back this season, how many raids you survived, whose bloodline you were born into. Most men in this room lose. George Murdoch cataloged 1,231 societies in his ethnographic atlas. About 85% of them legally allowed a man to marry more than one woman. Sounds like polygamy was the default setting for humanity. It wasn't. Among the Hadza in Tanzania, one of the last hunter-gatherer groups on Earth, fewer than 5% of men actually had more than one wife at a time. Everyone else had one or none. So if 85% of societies allowed it and almost nobody could pull it off, where did all those extra wives go? Resources, mostly. Feeding a second wife and her kids takes meat, land, wealth. Most men had none of that to spare. Only the best hunters, the toughest fighters, or a chief's son could afford a second household. Everyone else was fighting over what was left. And that fight is still written into your DNA. In 2015, geneticist Monica Carmen studied Y chromosome diversity worldwide. Somewhere between 7,000 and 5,000 years ago, right as farming spread across Europe, Asia, and Africa, male genetic diversity collapsed. At the worst point, roughly 17 women contributed to the next generation for every one man who did. That's not a small skew. That's the genetic fingerprint of a handful of men fathering an enormous share of the next generation, while huge numbers of other men fathered nobody at all. Researchers tie the timing to farming, inherited wealth, and powerful patrilineal clans, exactly the conditions that let a small number of men stack up wives and hand that advantage down. One case still makes the math hard to believe. In 2003, geneticist Tatiana Zergel found a single Y chromosome lineage carried by about 8% of men across a stretch of Asia from northeast China to Uzbekistan. Scaled up, that's roughly 16 million men alive today. The likely source? Genghis Khan, his sons and grandsons who took wives and concubines from every territory the Mongols conquered. His eldest son Jochi alone is said to have fathered around 40 sons. 1 in every 200 men alive right now may be a direct descendant of a 13th century warlord. Royal courts pushed it further. Ramesses II ruled Egypt for 66 years, kept at least 8 principal wives, plus a large harem, and fathered over 100 children. Their names are still carved into the temple walls at Abydos and Abu Simbel. The Hebrew Bible credits Solomon with 700 wives and 300 concubines, a number historians mostly read as propaganda about royal wealth rather than an actual head count. Even a tenth of that would have needed its own estate just to house everyone. Power bought access to wives, and wives brought power right back. A king who married a rival's daughter turned an enemy into family. A herder who paid bride price for 3 or 4 wives got extra hands in the field, extra children to inherit land, extra alliances with the camps next door. A wife wasn't just a companion, she was labor, loyalty, and a peace treaty wrapped into one person. For the men left out, it was bleak. When a small share of men hold multiple wives, roughly that same share of men end up with none. Some research on historical raiding cultures ties this straight to violence. Too many young men with no path to a wife fighting each other over what little was left at the bottom. Winning didn't make life easier, it just moved the war indoors. Multiple wives meant multiple households, all competing for the same inheritance, the same status, the same stores of food. In polygynous culture studied by anthropologists, senior wives often ran junior ones like a chain of command: who ate first, whose kids got taught to hunt, whose kids got left behind. A harem wasn't a fantasy, it ran more like a company with brutal succession politics. Farming made it worse. Before agriculture, you couldn't inherit a herd of nothing. A hunter-gatherer band had almost no wealth to pass down, so everyone started close to zero. Once families could stockpile land, livestock, grain, wealth became something a father could actually hand to a son. That's the same shift sitting in your DNA right now. Wealthy bloodlines locking in the advantage generation after generation, while poorer family lines just stopped. Everything you just heard was normal for 99% of human history. Monogamy is the anomaly here. One-wife laws spread through Rome, then Christian and civil codes, and reached most of the world only in the last 2,000 years, less than 1% of the time Homo sapiens has existed. So how many wives could an ancient man have had? Legally, more than one, almost everywhere. In practice, almost none, unless he already had wealth, status, or violence on his side. The few who broke through didn't just collect wives. Millions of people alive right now can trace a direct line back to one of them. One king, one conqueror, one chief who took more than his share.